We're sending out the data online, and I'll let people in. We got a handful of people here. Hello, everyone. Great to see you all again. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We've got a special guest today, so we'll have some fun there. I'll give an intro of her in a minute, but first I'll give an intro to where we're at, and what we're doing right now. For those that are streaming in on Facebook and YouTube, so they know what's going on. Let me pull up some info here real quick. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so this is Piano Tech Radio Hour, and it's being brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online educational resource that offers you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. And you can find out more at www.pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. Here at Piano Tech Radio Hour, we bring in some of the most interesting and educational folks in the piano industry, as well as covering topics of interest every week, every Saturday. We've been here for well over a year since the pandemic began. I think we started in maybe April, May of 2020, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And today we have a special guest that was actually recommended by one of our community members here and made a connection to our guest today. So that's really awesome. And I'll give a quick introduction to her, and then we'll dive into some conversation about what she may have to share about. So today's guest, I'll give a spotlight for her so you can see who that is. I'll make sure I'm on spotlight too. And we have Heather Fandrick. She has studied piano since age 5, but grew up herself with a less than ideal piano to practice on. Her first experience with a truly musical piano was playing the prototype of Daryl Fandrick's Vertical Action. Now she fervently wishes she had grown up with a musical piano, as she knows the results of her studies would have been quite different. She and Daryl met because her father, Robert Jenny, wrote Daryl's first 2 patents. And only later in life after she and Daryl married, did Heather make the interesting discovery that pianos were in her genes. Heather's great-great-grandfather was Frederick Methuselech, a noted piano designer and builder in the late 1800s. And of course, we brought her in to talk about the Fandrick action, which many in our industry appreciate the design features of, as well as touch upon some other aspects of her exposure in the piano industry. We'll probably save lots of details for another session, but we'll touch a little bit upon the Fandrick Rhodes method of weighing off actions and so forth. So yeah, without further ado, though, let's say hi. How's it going, Heather?
Well, it's going pretty good. My computer let me know my internet connection is a little unstable, which happens when we live out in the boonies. So if I freeze up for a minute, that's why.
No
But
problem.
of
Everything
course,
seems okay so far. You're coming through
yeah.
loud and clear to me, so
Okay. Well, you froze
so
up on me for a couple seconds, a couple times,
okay.
but
All
that's the
right.
only time it's happened. So hopefully
All
it'll
right.
work.
Well, you're
Okay.
the one. You're the one we're focused on. So as long as we can hear you, then we're good.
Okay. All right.
um,
Well,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, go ahead
I
if
was
you
just
want
going to
to
say,
give a little more introduction of yourself, and then I know there's some other things I might bring in some like photos and videos too to complement our
okay.
session here today. But yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead and feel free to say hi and introduce anything about yourself or
Okay.
Daryl that I haven't covered.
Well, there's one thing, and maybe it's not an issue with any of you folks, but a lot of people don't realize there are 2 Fondricks in the piano industry, Daryl and his brother Dell, who's 2 years younger. you can see why it's easy to confuse the two, Daryl and Dell. And so Daryl's the one that developed the Fondrick vertical action, and Dell's focus is piano design. Um, so just to make sure nobody's got anybody mixed up.
Yeah,
So
that's good information. Yeah,
yeah.
there's quite a few Fandricks in the industry in various ways, and we've definitely had Dell been involved. He's been on the radio hour here a couple times. He's actually given some lectures in the master classes that we give. He was involved early on and has always been supportive of what we're doing here. So we fully welcome the Fandrick family.
Okay. So I was a social worker for 30 some years and quit piano after 8 years because, like I said earlier, you said it was not a very exciting piano, and my mother let me know it was a little boring to listen to me practice. So could I practice when she wasn't around? When is your mother not around? Anyway, I'm now taking lessons again after 60 years, and it was a lot easier the first time, but I'm really enjoying it. And
Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that you're
yeah.
taking lessons. What kind of things are you studying in terms of, uh, are you studying classical piano? Are you composing
Oh, a
things? Where are you
variety.
at?
I don't compose. I never figured out how to compose, but I used to have, when we had our piano store in Seattle, I had hours to practice with nobody there. And I memorized a couple of Scott Joplin waltzes and a little jazz piece and a couple other things. And then we moved the business home. And of course, there's always something else to do at home. And so for 20 years, I played my signature tuning test song of Bach's First Prelude, and that's all I played. And not last spring, I decided it was time for me to start picking up some of the other things again. And I looked at the music, and I had forgotten a lot about how to read the music, which was pretty creepy.
Wow.
Yeah, would look at my hands on the keyboard and go, "You could play Bach's First Prelude without me looking or anything. But you come on, this and that, I mean, really simple stuff." My teacher is Josephine Gilchrist, and she is Egyptian, and she has been a teacher at the not the London Conservatory, but I forget the other one in England. And anyway, she's a fantastic teacher. She's hiding out from fame on Camino Island now. She doesn't want her because she used to be in the movies, or she was a Shirley Temple of Egypt. So she's just giving me her theory is to get us older people started again, and there are several of us taking lessons. She teaches here in the studio, so it's real handy for me. Um, she gives us pieces or excerpts of things that we recognize that we like. So I've my current one, I've just finally right on the cusp of conquering Chopin's Cantabile, and I really enjoy that. And I would like to go back. There's one piece that Daryl composed, the only one that ever got scored, that I used just flow it out of my hands and years ago, but even that one I had completely lost. So I'm looking forward to catching back up. But in the meantime, the way I met Daryl, my dad had been so excited about this invention. He's an aeronautical engineer, was an aeronautical engineer, and he had never thought about how pianos worked, even though we always had one. And he got really excited because he could see this Fondrick vertical action really worked. In fact, Daryl told me once that he didn't really understand how it worked until my dad explained it to him. So I'd been hearing about this for a couple of years before I ever met Daryl. And my mom found out he was single and made my dad invite him to Christmas dinner. So that's how we met. and
The rest is
and
history.
he, yeah, he and those involved in this whole thing, him and Chris Trevellis, who did a lot of support stuff. Chris didn't actually do any of the inventing, but he did a lot of patent searching, and he provided the prototype and so forth. Um, they were not business people. I was running a $300,000 annual budget program at the juvenile court in Everett, and so I wound up being the the business end of the situation, and watching Daryl work. I've always enjoyed working with my hands, and the first thing I saw was him bushing keys, and I thought, I can do that. That's just wood and felt and glue. So I started with that, and then he gradually taught me some other things. I didn't learn to tune until 2008, after he had a triple bypass, and I was driving him to his tuning classes, and by then he had finally reluctantly agreed to try the cyber tuner over oral tuning, and totally fallen in love with it. And I watched him do that, and I can do that, because by then my ear had really gotten refined just from listening to him and what he was teaching, and to listen to him play. Anybody who's listened to him play knows he was a fantastic player. Not in that he did the really fancy stuff, but just the mood that he could convey from his music. Okay, so I began to learn about the Fondrick vertical action. I looked at it the first time and thought, oh my Lord, I'll never understand that. But the other thing I wanted to mention is how he got into designing it, which was that he was very musical. His parents started him on the violin when he was 5. They wouldn't let him play the piano because they were afraid he was going to play sinful music like boogie woogie, which of course was exactly what he wanted to play in the early 50s. And so he went to private boarding school, the Seventh-day Adventist boarding school, and they had pianos there, uprights, that nobody was taking care of. So when he was 9 years old, before he went there, the tuner came and opened up their first piano, which was a Baldwin Acrosonic. And Daryl said the mechanical engineer part of his brain was hooked on all the moving parts at age 9. So when he was in the high school living there, he began to experiment with working on the uprights. And when he was 16, he decided to become a technician so he could earn spending money. And he started tuning pianos when he was 16. And after he finished college, he went on and moved to Southern California, where he mentored with the best people in the entertainment industry at that time. And he continued to become Steinway concert tuner in Portland, where I was a student at Reed College, and he was a technician, but we never ran across each other. And then came up to Seattle. And over the course of his tuning practice as a Steinway concert tuner, he heard so many people say, why can't somebody make an action for the upright piano that plays like the grand? And he decided on his 40th birthday that if he gave up the Steinway concert tuning and just worked at a subsistence level, he could do it. And it took him 8 years, and he did it. And he did his first action. Like I said, it was in a Steinway K52. And this is the prototype that he built. I'm not showing, it's got a really long capstan, and then I just somehow, the picture of me went back to being small. There's something I
You
do.
should be pretty. I think you should be main screen now. People
Yeah,
can say if they're not bright. Is that okay?
it's sudden.
I,
Well,
I
it's sudden.
changed it so
Oh,
that people
okay.
could see better.
Oh, all right. So, this is anyway, it's a prototype, a lot of parts that he cobbled together. He cut a jack from a grand piano into pieces and re-glued it. I think he had a jack from a Kawai, etc. So he began with that, he first exhibited it in 1989 at a convention, a Cal State convention in Sacramento, I believe. And then started looking for someone, hopefully, who would want to install it in their pianos. To demonstrate for anybody who hasn't seen it how it works, of course, this is the grand piano action. And as you probably all know, you play the key and the hammer hits the string. And then if you lift the hammer, the key moves correspondingly. So it works from both ends. That's what Daryl called a compression sandwich, continually connected opposing forces, except for the very tiny split second when the jack slips out from under the knuckle so the key can return. And as you know, there's a hammer rebound rail, but the hammer, well, this one may need to be regulated. This is our studio model. The hammer does not rest on that rail. It's a rebound rail to keep it from flying back and forth too much. And then the shank for the hammer rests on the jack. So when I move the jack, it's not coming through very well. I think this model needs to be regulated, but the hammer
We get it.
moves. Yeah, okay. And then, of course, in the traditional upright action, you lose that because you don't have gravity helping everything out. So when it goes to and this actually was the better playing action until Erard's grand action came out in the 1800s and then improved by Hertz. So the modern grand piano action is Hertz Erard. But this used to play better. But the jack is not resting on the hammer is not resting on the jack like it does in the grand. And if you move the hammer, the key doesn't move until you get all the way out to the end of the bridle tape, and maybe it'll pull it. So it doesn't have the continuously connecting opposing force. And as you all know, probably it gets jammed up if you try to repeat without letting the key almost all the way to the top. So what Daryl did, and he tried, I have a wad of springs I was going to grab over there on the shelf, but I won't bother. He tried many, many, many different configurations of springs and came up with this, which is you move the hammer and the key follows right along just as it does in the grand. And his last improvement to it was putting in a grand knuckle. He tried for close to 20 years to find a way to get a satisfactory response of the jack and the knuckle. And finally, one day, when he and John were in the middle of developing the touch weight program, it came to him in the middle of the night, which is when he is the middle of his day. Why don't I just put a grand knuckle in there? So that's our current version. And what it does is it keeps the continuously connected opposing forces. You can't really see it here, but there's a little paperclip style spring that connects the hammer butt with the jack and makes the jack snap right back under. It's always ready to repeat. And again, the hammer does not rest. This becomes a rebound rail rather than a rest rail. And instead of using this as a soft pedal, we have underneath, and I have another model that has it, but underneath the back end of the key is a rail. When you step on the soft pedal, you can step on it a lot or a little, and it will move the hammer. It moves the whole action closer to the string. You'll notice the key depress a little bit. So you can play this actually without even the soft pedal. You can play it so quietly that you almost can't hear it. But when you repeat this, it's hard to do it when it's not on the bench, but it will repeat with barely any. It'll repeat faster than most grand pianos, actually. So that's how it works. I just remembered I wanted to have you maybe show Oliver's video now. Oliver Esmond White is a technician in Montreal. He has been a Yamaha technician for 30 plus years. He got interested in our pianos a little over a decade ago and actually has become so interested and so involved that he has decided it's his mission to make the Fondrick vertical action the standard upright action. He's got the marketing skills and the contacts and the personality and all of that we didn't have to carry it to that level. So we're still building, my son and I. I'm assuming most of you know that Daryl passed away in August of 2019. But my son, Stephen Chambers, and I are continuing the business. And Stephen is still building the Fondrick vertical action and intends to keep that legacy going. He's got my great-great-grandfather's genes too, it turns out. He's an excellent piano technician, and both of us took all the opportunities we could as it became clear that Daryl was, his health was failing, to learn everything we could. I'm now a tuner and voicer, and Stefan does the mechanical stuff. He tunes also, but he prefers the mechanical. But he's only here one day a week, so our production time has gone down some, although it's actually not as slow as it was at the beginning because Daryl kept changing his mind about how to regulate. He built this thing, but he didn't know what was the best regulation procedure, and that took some years to develop. We used to tease him about one more thing. He'd come in and say, "Oh, well, there's one more thing." So the fellow that was working there and I would learn that thing. And then about 3 weeks later, he'd come and he'd say, "Well, there's one more thing." And finally in 2012, when he put the hammer butt in, we said, "That's it, no more things." And he said he was satisfied at that point finally. So um, anyway, Oliver has a number of projects going, and he's got a little recording that Ethan found
Yeah.
on, I guess, on his website, just
Want me to
kind of
pull it up?
to acquaint you with him. Yeah, so that because
All right.
you're going to be hearing from him down the road, I think.
Cool. Let me, yeah, and I think I found a few photos too we might get to at some point as well.
Okay.
But let's start with that video. I think I have it over here. Yeah, right. This looks right. Let's get that full screen and take a look. Is that it? Wait. Yes, this is it.
Today I want to talk to you about the upright standard action, which has been around for 100, 150 years, and the difference between it and a Fandrick vertical action. I'm not going to go into technical details, but I want to show you. Every system has a breakdown point, and the reason we talk about a superior Fandrick vertical action versus the upright is because it doesn't break down as quickly. And that's really easy to see. This is a standard action, this is a Fandrick that we're just finishing up making. And as I push down the key on the standard, yeah, it plays very perfectly, but then if I try and repeat, you see it's no longer playing. It breaks down and you don't have a reliable repeat here. So on soft blows repeated, sometimes you have to lift your finger all the way up to get it to repeat. And that's one thing that breaks down more rapidly than in this Fandrick vertical action. So if I play this at the very bottom, I can get a repeated note completely reliably at all kinds of volumes. So that's one of the big deals. It doesn't break down as quickly. The other thing is, because of the way it's set up, you always have control. There's all kinds of parts that have been simplified, not made more complicated in the Fandrick vertical action. For example, here you have a rail that this, called a shank, sits against. Well, here we don't even need a rail. Just like in a grand piano, rail is not necessary. Another thing is for the hammers to come back. In the vertical standard, they have this little piece of tape and a wire that pulls the hammer back, and a spring here which pushes it back. That wire and that tape are gone. They're just gone. So how does it work? Well, this spring has been increased and is actually adjustable in the back. And there is, instead of this bouncing around like that, in a Fandrick, it's actually connected and stays hooked up. I'll show you that a little bit later, but the real reason that you want a Fandrick vertical action piano is because it's reliable and it can play many, many more volumes, completely controllable under your fingers. It repeats faster, it plays more quality of tone. You can search and get things that you just can't in a standard upright, period.
So Oliver is developing actually manufacturing, a production line form of manufacturing the parts. We right now have the hammer butts made, used to be by Renner. Now they're made by a company in China. And we have our jacks made right here, 20 miles down the road. They're injection molded Delrin with a little bit of fiberglass fill. One of the things we learned the hard way was there needed to be enough friction between the knuckle and the jack end. And so Daryl played around with the shape of the top of the jack and the material for quite a while before he was really satisfied with it. The other thing that I didn't mention about as far as how the action works that Oliver briefly mentioned, the repetition spring, which connects the tip of the jack and the back catcher shank. The other spring that replicates gravity is the repetition spring, and it's on a rail here and goes into this. There's a little groove, we call it a rabbit ear groove, and it is adjustable, and you can the touch basically. And then it has weights in the playing end of the key, unlike the traditional upright action, or the traditional upright action sometimes has a weight and they just put it in at the factory just to give it a little more heft, feel a little bit more like a grand piano, but it's not placed to strategically to keep all the touch even across the piano. I think that's about it on the tick. Go ahead.
I've also got some images here I can pull up for a little bit more clarity. Let me get them set up here. I think I got that and that. This one looks useful. This one is redundant. Let's close that. Yeah, let's take a look at these photos too, because I think we'll get a little bit more clarity as well. Okay, so I've got these. So this looks like, so this is a Renner action, it looks like, huh? So this is
we built it on Renner model.
Okay, got it. Make sure I wasn't confused there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Now
so
this has the repetition spring.
Right.
And then
so which one are you calling the repetition spring? That's
the repetition spring goes from the jack to the back catcher.
Okay.
And it's very simple. And then the hammer return spring is what takes the place of gravity and forces the hammer back to rest on the jack, not on the rest rail. It's a rebound rail now. And as Oliver showed in his video, and we used to do that when we take it to Piano and Technician Guild conventions, we'd open it up and take that front rail off. Inevitably, technicians would come by and say, "What's holding those hammers up?" And so, because there was, otherwise you take that rail off in a traditional upright action, the hammers all fall back. So.
And I noticed when Oliver was showing off the grand action, the hammers look relatively aligned as well. Is that easy to get? Is that necessary? So they're not resting on anything, but they are sort of in a relatively neat line. How is that hammer line regulated? Is that do the capstans like typical or
yeah. The regulation, and I'm not really familiar with that. I did a little bit of it, but that was 20 years ago. But the regulation is a combination of steps that technicians are familiar with. If they know how to regulate a grand and they know how to regulate an upright, they know everything. And we have provided regulation instructions to technicians all around the country. And actually we have pianos in 6 foreign countries. People find us on the internet. And so, so that's regulated. We use a stretch string and a light actually to reflect a shadow on the tails of the hammers. And then it's easy to just turn the capstan until you've got it lined up there. And let off, I think, is similar to the grand. So it's not something that was one of the Daryl's goals when he started out, was to make it something that would be manufacturable, mass production wise. And over the years, we were glad at first they thought, Yamaha was really interested. Their technicians were crawling all over the piano before the exhibit booths opened at the NAMM show one year, taking pictures. But when it came right down to it, none of the big manufacturers would do it because they kind of have, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They had thousands of pianos in inventory with the traditional action. Schimmel was very interested, but they had to give up because when we first introduced it, they were still on the Deutschmark, and the price of their pianos had gone up so much, or the price, the dollar against the Deutschmark was not favorable to Germany anymore. And so he, with tears in his eyes, Niklaus Schimmel told us he couldn't do it. He had to lay off a third of his staff, which was unheard of. And so he wasn't able to. Julius Feurich actually did take it on, and I think 3 or 4 were built within the Feurich piano. We did 1 or 2 of those. And then he unfortunately got his business tangled up with China and lost the name. So that went away. Walter was originally going to do it, and then his family voted no. But that was what gave Dell the idea. He saw that it was manufacturable, and so he had always wanted his own piano design company, and he designed rather than vertical action. So that's what got us on the market. And his wife, Barbara, she's a magnificent
You're breaking up a little bit there, just so you know.
spot on CNN, and the airplane, he watched it, and he had his agent buy one for him. So one of the pianos in England is owned by George Harrison's son now.
Tell us, you dropped out briefly. You said something about Barbara. What is she magnificent at?
She's a magnificent marketer.
Ah, right.
Yeah, she's very good at that. So
she definitely is Dell's manager in some way. Like
yes.
When I book Dell, I just have to contact Barbara about that.
That's the way Daryl was too. They're Fondriks. They have this musical, an engineering gene, but they don't have the day-to-day organizational skills.
Right.
That's what Barbara and I do.
I got that. So here's a close-up of these of the action here, so you can see the springs a little bit better. That's interesting to look at.
Much better. That's not got the knuckle in it. That's the older version. And the thing that Daryl didn't like about that was that, like when you slide, say, a table across a carpet and the carpet bunches up under the leg, and as the jack was sliding back under the hammer, on a grand piano action, the hammer falls back to rest at a uniform speed from the top till it comes to rest. And this was not quite doing it because we couldn't get this leather tight enough so that it wouldn't encounter a little bulge and then slide under. And that's what the last thing that Daryl was bugged by after years of moving, where the hole goes in the shank and how to attach the spring. We build the spring rails, we build the soft pedal rail, we have to finish the hammer butt. So we're a workshop. We're not a manufacturer, a mass production person. But that's what Oliver's aiming for, is a mass production. And actually, he's got a bunch of engineers he's hired, and they're developing processes. And so we're excited about that. He really believes in this action. He's quite a competent pianist himself, and just decided that that's what he needs to do. So we're grateful. So when you hear about Oliver Esmond White, know that he has our full support.
Cool. I had a question from Dorothy here. Maybe you sort of addressed it in saying all the different possibilities in distributing the action or implementing it. But she asked specifically, why isn't Renner making your parts? Is there any specific answer for that? Or?
Well, because they made so many parts that by the time we were running out of them, the people who, it was a real coup to get them to do it in the first place. And one of the fellows who was invested in fact, he was the main investor in Dell's piano project. He took it upon himself to fly first to, I think it was Langer in England, and they don't even exist anymore, and try to get them to build a hammer butt. And then he went on to Herginge at Renner. And this was in the early 90s. And Herginge said yes, which was really amazing because, of course, our quantities were small, and there were a lot of reasons not, to resist this innovation, but he really supported it. So when we went back to eventually to Renner to get more parts, everybody was gone that had supported it. They didn't know, they were retired. They couldn't find the mold to cut the hammer butt the way, we needed it to be and all that stuff. So I'm trying to remember. Well, we've always been really good friends with Arthur Poppenberg, and Arthur's not his first name. I'm blanking on it. At any rate, he was quite involved with the Chinese companies. He got us the Pearl River pianos that we've been using to install the action in, Arnold Poppenberg. And he recommended this parts manufacturer that Pearl River actually uses. And they were willing to build us hammer butts. So that's why we, plus the cost, of course, the cost factor also, but they do excellent quality work. The quality of their pianos in general from when we started using them in the 90s till now is just pretty astounding. Daryl was their consultant for a couple of years, Pearl River. He went over there and spent a couple months in the factory a couple times, and well, actually a total of a month, and taught them things. They'd never seen anybody do needle voicing. They'd heard of it, but they hadn't seen it. So he did a class for them, and at the end of his time, they gave him a certificate that said he had achieved the prowess of a 3-year-old with chopsticks. he had a really good time with working with the employees. They were very responsive and interested and motivated to build good pianos. So that's why we're not with Renner anymore.
So I thought it might be interesting. I found online some photos that it had been posted on your Facebook, and maybe we could take a look through some of those too.
Sure.
You could just, I know maybe at some point too, if we want to try it, we could do a little tour of your space. But let's look at these photos because that'll also do a little bit of that justice. In the meantime, while I pull these pictures up, Dorothy asked, do you custom build actions for old uprights? If so, who long? I don't know what that is. I think it's a typo, but and how much? Or how long and how much?
Probably.
Oh yeah, how long? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have only actually retrofitted it into, I think, 3 older pianos, 2 of which were Steinways, and the other one, I don't remember what brand it was, but it had the 70 millimeter jack, which is critical because the jack is a molded piece, and the mold, well, we've got about $20,000 invested in our mold, which is for a 70 millimeter length jack. And so the engineering is quite complex. This is something that Oliver is working on. He wants to be able to install into older pianos and also possibly provide kits for technicians to do the installation. And that's something we never got far enough to do that. Daryl was a little bit leery of it, of course, being the inventor. He's quite, protective, but Oliver's confident that he'll be able to do that. So down the road, that will be coming. I've
Cool. Let
lost.
me bring up these
Okay.
photos and let's see if you can give us a little virtual tour of if any of these are relevant. Can you see my screen now? Can you see the
Yeah.
photos?
Yeah.
Um,
So
Pick out any ones that you think have anything interesting to say about. I suppose this one might be cool to see the space, and you can. This is where you're sitting right now. Is that correct?
right. Yeah. This is our studio, and I'm sitting over on the right hand side. That's just out of the picture, and those little white squares on the wall at the back end, those are our first 8 patents that were issued. We got a new patent when we put the grand knuckle into the hammer butt. So yeah, this is our started out life as a 3-car garage, but we never used it, and we decided it would make a great piano studio. Um, One of the pictures that you had on there previously was of a hand rubbed satin finish, which is something, yeah, this second from the left on the top row, and also the first one. My son Stefan can do that finish, take a polyester piano and rub it out um, to the satin finish, which is an
Beautiful.
option that we're not actually really offering right now because with him only working here 1 day a week, he doesn't have time to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's what that is.
Looks nice.
So
Let's
these
see
are,
here.
yeah, what we do.
Is
We
this?
also, besides selling Fondrick pianos with Fondrick action, obviously we sell grands, which we also get at this point from Pearl River. And we do a high-end European prep to those, including our touch weight, our weight bench program. Um, and so that's the other thing that we sell. You can't just keep a piano business going on one model. So here we are, retired social worker and piano technician going into retail. This picture, scroll back down again for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there, the one on the right with all the people, that's our summer recital. One of the teachers who didn't have a good piano at her home until she bought one of ours last spring, but she would have her kids come over and do their recitals in our studio, and which, as you can see, is a log cabin basically.
Yeah. Tell people first of all. Well, tell them where you're located specifically, and tell them about these the building of that I found interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, we're located 3 miles south of downtown Stanwood, which is about 50 miles north of Seattle, and we're right on the coast, just above the delta. Yeah, these are just various. Well, the one that you passed one on that showed the shop. Well, that's the studio, but then there's one that showed cleaning the concrete pad in front of the shop. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. That's our shop. And you can't see the top part. It's actually 3 stories tall, and the shop part is 2 stories tall because it was originally built so you could back a semi-trailer in there before Daryl arrived. And then there's a door up top that has no stairs, but that's where we do the work. And some of the pictures are from inside the shop. Anyway, how I got here, my kid's dad and I bought this property in 1978, and it was not cleared at all except maybe the first 50 feet. This is a picture of, that's got Stefan and my grandson, or my nephew rather. That's me. No, that isn't him. That's Stefan. This is a customer and his son, and then that's me. This is in the shop. We've got 5 or 6 workbenches. We have a spray booth. We have a room that we call the dirty room where all the dusty stuff happens, which has its own fan to the outside. It's 2,000 square feet. Anyway, we bought the property. We moved up here in a trailer. We lived in a 24-foot trailer for a year. We were both working full time, and I was pregnant. And we bought a kit and we built our log house, which is people call it a cabin, but it's 3,500 square feet. It has a full basement, 5 bedrooms. And then we bought the kit and built this, what was the garage. But we were always parked over in front of the house. We were too lazy to walk all the way from the garage to the house. So it was just sitting here. And so when Daryl came into my life and he married and we moved up here, and actually we had started the store. And this has, a huge shop, in the store in Seattle had a 400 square foot shop. And we literally had times we had to crawl under the pianos to get out the back door. So we just moved home. Took a fellow 3 years to convince us that we needed a website. No, a year to convince us. He finally just did one for us. And 3 years after that, we looked at who was buying the pianos, and it was not one single person walking in off the street. It was all from either Larry Fine's book, which Larry Fine reviewed the action before Daryl even had it finished the first time, and then we were in all four of his books. People who found us on the internet or from referrals from Daryl's long-standing concert tuning customers. And so we turned this into a shop, into studio. Fortunately, the young guy that we hired not only was really good at building action parts and actions, he also was plumbing and wiring and carpentry and all of that. So he designed the interior lighting fixtures and they finished this up, and the shop never quite got finished, but it's quite finished enough. So
I think I see some pictures from the interior of the shop here. Let's take a look. Is this in the shop area? Is that correct?
yes, that's
Got it.
Daryl at one of the Fondrick actions. That's his old original workbench he had in his loft apartment in Pioneer Square when I met him. That's the dirty room there. Over on this wall, we have 4 benches and then a 5th bench coming around the corner. The door's over in the corner over there. What you're seeing this little bit here, that's an Erard Grand, 1895 Erard Grand straight strung that
Where is
actually
that?
Olive. It's over
That's
in
in the.
the right hand side, and all you can see is the
Oh, right
leg.
here, just the
And
corner of
yeah,
it. Got it.
yeah. So that will probably wind up at Oliver's. We were going to put a Fondrick action in it, but of course we never had time to do that. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
and it's
we
got new
actually.
strings.
It's interesting. We have been reviewing a little bit of an Erard piano that I came across when I was traveling in Peru back in like 2015, 2016. So we've been doing a few detours into, you know, some historical pianos and things like that as part of this group.
Mm-hmm.
This is also
And
in your
that's
shop, yeah?
Stefan in the shop, yeah. And let's see if I can tell. I think that was. I can't. Oh no, this is the side with the benches, yeah. So that's the other guy that was with us. Promised us 4 years, gave us 18. He's the one that wrote the weight bench program and also a string scale program that Daryl taught him what he needed to know to write it. And that was his corner back there. And he was 6'5", so his benches are higher. You can see there's a drop down. I have to have a lower bench. But after 18 and a half years, he still is our webmaster and
Wow.
helps me out when I get tangled up with things.
Now you said you
That's
had
that's in the studio. The top right on this one, that's me doing a weight bench, actually marking keys
And
for.
you said this is a three-level place. Are the pianos only on the first level? Do you bring them up to the
Well,
second and third level? How does
no,
that work?
the first story is 2 stories high. So then there's an unfinished apartment on the third, what's basically would be the third floor, but it's just one. We've got a 14, 16-foot ceiling in the downstairs, and then stairs up to, there is a loft on one side, but that's just for storage. This is a hammer shaping jig, I think. Or no, it's a hammer gluing jig. Gluing them
Got
onto
it.
the shanks.
Got it.
I don't know what we're going to do when we eventually aren't doing this anymore. We've got everything you could possibly want. One of the things we do when we modify an upright for and we use the Pearl River EU 131 is what we're using now. we put in new shanks and hammers rather than trying to reuse theirs in our hammer butts. So that's what this is in this picture.
Got it. Yeah, and I might pull up a video too. I found one of someone using maybe the Fandrick Rhodes methodology here. If there's time left, we'll get a little bit,
Sure.
I guess, a preview of that. Um, let's see if there's anything else of interest here.
This is Randy. That if you go back one to that screen, that multi-screen. This is Randolph Hokanson, who was the head of the music department at the University of Washington for 40 years. And he was, well, Daryl got fired by him because he was so unreliable about showing up on time. This was before I was in his life. And then when Randy played his upright action at an exhibit, he told me to tell Daryl he was sorry he had fired him, and and he hired him back with me to make sure he got there on time. But he came and he played the pianos, and he says, "This was worth living to 90 to come and play these."
Nice.
So,
That's these two photos here with the blue
yeah,
shirt on. Yeah,
right.
very cool. Uh,
And
yeah,
we've
looks
had
like
lots of comments like that over the years.
let me pull up this video. So we've talked to John Rhodes a little bit, and hopefully some week down the line here
Oh,
we'll get him to come and talk about the Fandrick Rhodes methodologies. But it looks like somebody's posted a video here of going through a little bit of the procedure.
yeah, that's
Wondering if,
Chris Chernobyf. He's a good friend of ours too.
all right, maybe I'll pull this up and we can watch a little bit of that to get a taste.
Sure.
All
Yeah, I
right.
haven't seen this one, so I'd like to see it.
Hello, Chris here. So I'm going to be analyzing an action in this video, so let's get started. 17.05. Knuckle height, about 9.6. Shank thickness, 5.92. Center pin to strike point, 136.1. Capstan to whip center, 63.78. Back center to whip and center, 99. Jack style. Place a ruler on the center pins and see where the jack is. So this is high above the line. If it was right on, that'd be medium. And if it was below, it'd be low. Measuring the key, 294. Capstan to balance pin, 165. Measuring inertial weight, 42.7. So the idea here is what we are really measuring is note 49. But what Fondrick does is he takes two notes on either side of 49 and measures them all 5 to get an inertial weight. Then you divide by 5 and you get the average inertial weight. All right, so the inertial weight of the 5 hammers was 42.7 grams, and the average inertial weight by dividing by 5 is 8.54. And then to get the strike weight, you divide by 1.045. All right, so I ran the numbers through the computer program, and here's my final numbers. Action ratio 5.89, strike weight 8.17, and the ITF, the inertial touch factor, 221, which is classified as easy. So one thing that I've learned from this action is that I personally think I like the lower action ratios. This is a 5.89, which is on, I think 5.9. Well, that is 5.9. 5.9 is the top of the accepted range. I think I like the low end of the range, 5.2. So that's what I'll probably be doing on my next rebuilds, is start working on getting those action ratios on the lower end. I like the feel better. But the ITF number is where I like it. I like that a lot, on the easy side right there. Not a runaway easy. That would be like 200. Fondrick has a scale, 200 to 300. 200 being really easy, and below that, it feels like it's running away from you. And 300, it's a Mack truck. So usually 220, 230 in that range is my preference. Anyway, so there's an analysis of a Grand Action. In this case, it was the Baldwin SD6. All right, thanks for watching.
Cool. Got a little insight into the general procedure there. Let me stop this video here. And yeah, hopefully we'll get John in here coming in sometime soon as well, and we'll get a little bit more detailed look at this this Fandrick Rhodes procedure. Oops, let's see here. Where is? Give me 1 second. I'm trying to find. Did we lose? Did we lose Heather, or where's she? Wave or something. I think we lost her. I think we lost Heather. All right. Well, that's good timing then. We'll wrap up because I think we just have a few minutes left, and I bet you her internet conked out just in time. So perfect. Anyways, what I was leading to is I talked to Heather, and she's in touch with John Rhodes, and she spoke with him this week, and it sounds like it'd be really useful to have him come and join her, or do a solo session, or bring in a co-host, a co-teacher or something at some point down the line here, and we can talk a little bit more about the Fandrick Rhodes action techniques here. They have a program that you can use. Apparently, it makes everything very systematic and leaves a lot of questions out of the equation, so there's a bit less guesswork. So yeah. That'll be on a future session. And besides that, unless there's any other questions or comments before we sign off, we did put a link in the chat. There's a feedback link if you want to give your feedback for this session. And if you're not signed up for Piano Tech Radio Direct Access, there's a link for that. And here comes Heather. Maybe we'll just let her back in for a minute to say goodbye. Get her in here. Heather, where you at? Let's unmute you. Let's see here, and then we'll add a spotlight. Just unmute yourself. I'll send a message to make sure she is aware. Unmute yourself. There you are.
Okay.
Say hi.
Hi.
Hey.
I got
So
disconnected rather
we figured.
abruptly.
We figured.
I'm on the fringe of we have a network between here and the shop and the house, and all of a sudden it's kind of on the edge out here in the studio. So.
Understood. Well, we were pretty much wrapping up anyway, so we were prepared to just leave on an abrupt note. But yeah, feel free to say goodbye.
Well, yeah,
we all are thanking you for your time and energy. We really appreciated you joining us today.
I was going to say real quickly, Chris Chernobyv was doing the inertial part of the weight bench program and doing it very well, and that part is what we use if we find that if there's any doubt, and Baldwin's can be a heavy piano, heavy touch. When you're assessing the piano, you can actually take the laptop to somebody's home and make all these measurements, and the program that Nate wrote does all the calculating. You don't have to know any of that stuff. You just have to look at the pictures and follow what the pictures say, measure from here to here, put it in, and then you have options to change the touch to heavier or lighter, and how to do that. Anyway, John will go over all of that in detail, but yeah, that was a very good video that Chris did.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Heather, for joining us. I appreciate it, and we'll definitely be in touch and hopefully see you again down the line, maybe in the new year.
Yeah, yeah. And when John's doing all the presenting, I'll go on put the computer in the house where I won't get disconnected.
There you go. That actually came through
This was
pretty
fun.
well.
And thanks for having me
Awesome.
do it.
Of course, it was our pleasure. All right. Well, we'll
Okay.
see you again soon. Have a
All
happy
right.
holiday. Bye bye.
You too.